My name is Nicholas Tamagna. I am a countertenor classical singer. I grew up in Linwood Gardens, which is basically a suburb upstate. Used to be bungalows, summer residences for New York City residents that used to go up there in the 60s, 50s and 60s, and then it turned into these kind of cookie cutter house developments. It's where my grandparents moved in the 50s, and it's a little bit like the Wonder Years, if you can imagine it. I was actually doing musical theater a lot through high school, and so I was already into stage and theater and singing, but I didn't think that was necessarily going to be my path in college. And I chose to be a piano major, I guess because I thought I'd do music education and I'd teach choir or do something like that. And I quickly figured out that I really couldn't take the bureaucracy of public education. And I knew that it wasn't going to be a good fit for me. And that if I was going to teach, I'd probably do it privately or through a higher education sort of conservatory method, but maybe not public. And I, in my second year of college, became a voice major because I took a voice class, and the woman running it was like, you clearly could be a major, or at least a minor or a double major, you know, would you consider it? And I said yes. Probably one of my biggest inspirations, right, in recent memory would be my current voice teacher, Alyssa Grimaldi, who has been just so incredibly instrumental in getting me on a vocal path that was finally clicking with what I understood intellectually, being able to physically do it. I spent, like I said, about 10 years sort of figuring out what voice type I was. They tried to make me a tenor, then I became a baritone. It wasn't quite working because I didn't really like being a baritone. I didn't like the repertoire. And my voice just naturally had this facility for a head voice mix and a falsetto that was very strong. And she was the only person that really took the time to explore that and investigate that. And I just admire her intuitive instincts about the voice, if you couldn't sing. Or you even ask yourself that question because it is a reality. It's kind of like, well, someday you're not going to be able to sing. You're going to have to do something else with your life. You hope that's like when you're really old and don't care what you do and you can just sit on a couch and not worry about it. But the reality is it could happen sooner, and you have to be prepared for what you're going to do with the rest of your life that interests you. And I would say that for me, it would probably always involve something that's communication arts related. The computer kind of entered into my life quite early. We were a fortunate school to have them by the end of my elementary school education. We actually started to have computers. I mean, I remember using the computer lab to play Oregon Trail. That was always a big fun thing to do. And I remember the dot matrix printers, and we'd create all these things on some kind of art program there, and then you could print it up, and that terrible screeching noise and all of that. One thing that I think is a problem is that it's very easy nowadays to get recordings of various performances on the internet and hear a million versions of the same thing, which can be useful or it can be a hindrance. I've learned how to make it useful for me. I mean, I listen to all these things in kind of a one-day format, and I go through and I listen to all these different performances, and I mark down things that I find interesting that other people have done, and then I don't listen to it again through the whole process of learning a role. Because I really think that part of the artistic process is discovering your own thing. But I think it is helpful to hear what other people have done to help sort of influence maybe ways in which you could go about doing this particular role, especially if it's something that's so completely new to you and you don't really know where to begin. So it's important to get the balance right of how much you draw on the vast availability of recordings and not kind of hold on to them so strongly that you don't develop your own ideas. As a millennial generation, I think we tend to have very specific characteristics that set us apart. Artistically, I think that we certainly don't take things on face value anymore. I think we tend to have been exposed to so much media and so many things in our daily lives that we often find it's hard to just accept one interpretation of things anymore. So we're always kind of pushing the envelope in terms of where we can go with our art form. And that can very much clash with some of the people who maybe are in the administrative positions, who are of an older generation, who don't see things necessarily that way. So your artistic vision may not line up with what a company's artistic vision is. Although I'm seeing more and more, especially with smaller regional companies, that's changing. And certainly as that changes, that influences what the bigger companies do.